What's up, beer lovers? Tonight's beer review is going to be on Abita's Pecan Harvest Ale. It's a seasonal offering from Abita. One thing to note, their website shows this beer listed at 5%. The bottle lists it at 5.2, so one of them's not correct. The other one is. They're close, though, so we'll just let it slide. This beer has a 77 score from Beer Advocate. It is brewed with toasted pecans from Louisiana. My wife picked out this beer. Sometimes she does our shopping. Most of the time. Who am I kidding? And I'll ask her, hey, grab me something for a review. And sometimes she comes up with some really interesting picks, like this one. I gotta say, I was excited to try this beer. Beer brewed with pecans. Sounds great. So, let's see if it was. I believe the IBUs on this beer are 20, and the SRM is 19. So, it pours to a nice, dark, orange, copper, whatever you want to call it there. Pours to about a 1/4 inch head, maybe 1/8 of an inch. Just a tiny bit of lacing present there. Let's give it a smell. There is a pronounced malt character smell there. And I pick up just a little bit of esters from the yeast. Not anything that's going to turn you off, just a little bit there. And it's listed as a brown ale, so it's a little light for that style. But you know, brown ales aren't supposed to have pecans in them either, so let's give them a little slack. It's got an interesting flavor to it. I can't say that if I handed you this beer not knowing there's pecans in it, you would say, oh my god, that's a pecan beer. You're not going to get that from it, but there is a unique toastiness to it that you don't normally find in malt. It's hard to describe. I don't want to go cliche here and say it's nutty, but that's kind of the flavor you get from it. It's kind of a nutty, toasted, unique side note to the flavors that are in this beer. Other than that, it's got a nice, just a hair of sweetness from the malt. It's actually pretty well balanced with the hops, even though it's got a very low IBU rating. It's pretty well balanced. It doesn't finish overly sweet, but it leans towards the sweet side of a beer. It's somewhat smooth. Definitely not the smoothest beer I've ever had, but it certainly isn't anything I would describe as harsh. Yeah, malt and a really nice toasted nuttiness to it. For lack of a better term, I hate to use that because I used pecans in it. But that being said, the aftertaste leaves something to be desired. I'm not a real nut fan, other than peanuts and cashews, which technically neither one of them is a nut. One's a drupe, one's a legume. And that, whenever you eat, nuts at Christmas time and you're cracking the shells open and you get that odd bittering that doesn't ever quite taste good to me. That's what I get from this beer as well. Whatever's in nuts that, they taste good when you put them in your mouth and you're chewing them up and you swallow and you're like, oh, what is that? It completely ruined my experience. The same thing's happening with this beer. There's an aftertaste there that is just not for me. I mean, maybe if you're a real nut lover and that flavor that's in nuts doesn't bother you, you might get a lot more pleasure out of this beer than I am. For me, I think one of these is enough. I'm glad I tried it. It's definitely an interesting pick from my wife. And it sounded really good. You know, to be honest with you, I mean, pecan beer, you know, it'd be better maybe if it was pecan pie beer. You know, throw some seasonings in there and a little sweetness and maybe some brown sugar or molasses and really give it a pecan pie flavor. May actually make a better beer than just the toasted pecans, which to me leaves something to be desired. Have a good night.